Okay, so this is the review that's just of the factoring part. Don't forget your quiz also has multiplying as well, but you can always check the factoring problems by multiplying back, and that's going to make sure that you have the actual correct answer. So the front page just says factor, the back page is factor completely. So again, the idea when it just says to factor, you're only factoring once. You just need to determine whether it's going to be GCF, dots, or IAM. Always look for a GCF first. If it doesn't have one, then determine if it's got 3 terms in which you're going to have to IAM, or if it's got 2 terms and you're going to have to use dots. Well, number 1, there is no GCF, so it must be an IAM. Numbers that multiply to 32 but add to 16, or I'm sorry, add to 18 are 16 and 2. So I've got x plus 16, x plus 2. Again, I'm not showing you all the extra work. You can always say what plus what equals 18, and then you can always say what times what equals 32. You can also use your calculator. Don't forget that the calculator you can use as well. And on the calculator, all you would have to do is go to your y equals button and find out what are the factors of 32. If you realize that they both have to be positive because it adds to a positive as well as multiplying to a positive, then you're only going to look at the positive values. So essentially what I'm saying by that is I'm going to clear this out. Second plus 7, enter 2. We're looking for the problem of x squared plus 8x plus 32. So I'm trying to go to my y equals and say, well, I want to find out 32 divided by what numbers work evenly. If I go to my table of values, I know they're both supposed to be positive. I'm trying to add to 18. Well, 1 plus 32 isn't 18, but 2 and 16 are. That's why I'm using x plus 2 and x plus 16. Number 2, GCF? No. 2 terms, it's dots. So I'm looking for perfect squares. Well, 100x squared becomes 10x, and 10x. 49 negative becomes minus 7 and plus 7. Look at the next one. I need to multiply to negative 15, add to positive 2. There's no GCF, that's why I'm doing an IAM. Just to show you the calculator once again, if you want to multiply to negative 15, go to y equals and say, well, negative 15 divided by what values for x are going to add to give me a positive 2. So I'm looking for a positive 2. Well, if I come down here, positive 3 and negative 5 add to negative 2, but that then should tell you just reverse your signs. Let's take a look at negative 3. Negative 3 and positive 5 add to positive 2. So my factors must be x minus 3 and x plus 5. So x minus 3, x plus 5. Number 4, GCF. Absolutely. GCF is 2x. What's left over? Well, 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times minus 12 is negative 24x. This is not factor completely. You're done. Once you do something once, you're finished. Number 5 looks kind of strange with all those different letters, which almost is a telltale sign that it's going to have to be a GCF. So if I look at the numbers between 15, 30, and 45, 5 is the biggest number. Actually, 15 is the biggest number that goes into all of them. In the variables, my smallest or my largest amount of variables, in this case I can pull out, is r to the first. The GCF is the smallest power, whatever's common. And for the s's, I'm going to pull out an s. What's left over, I need an s squared. I need 15 times 2 to get me to 30, an r, and an s squared again. And then I need to do minus 3, and then an r. So that should be your final answer for 5. Remember, it was just factor, not factor completely. So GCF comes out, and then what's left over. Number 6, there is no GCF, so I'm looking for an IAM. It's got 3 terms. What's going to multiply to 88 but add to 19, and that's going to be 11 and 8. So this becomes x plus 11, x plus 8. Number 7, no GCF, 3 terms. It's IAM. What's going to multiply to a positive 9 but add to a negative 6? X minus 3 twice. Number 8, There is no GCF, but I've got two terms, difference of two squares. This is going to be dots, m minus 4n, m plus 4n. 9, two terms, but I have a GCF. So this is going to be 6 in terms of the numbers, 6xy squared. What's left over? 2y minus 3x. Number 10, no GCF, it's an IAM. What multiplies to negative 6 but adds to negative 1 is x minus 3 and x plus 2. So this was the first page of just factor. Okay, so this is just factor. And again, I'm not showing you all that work on the side because I don't need to. I don't think you really need to either, but feel free to do it. Just determine whether it's GCF, dots, or IM. What makes this back page different is now the instructions say factor completely. That means it's GCF and then either dots or IM. So I'm always looking for GCFs first. In this case, the GCF is 3. What's left over is 25 minus x squared, which is a dots. So it becomes 3, 5 minus x, 5 plus x. GCF cannot be left out of your final answer. The next one, number 12, the GCF is 2. What's left over? C squared minus 12c plus 36. And I'm going to IAM that parenthesis, but I can't leave out my GCF. What's going to multiply to 36 but add to negative 12? C minus 6 and C minus 6. Remember, your final answer has to have GCF outside of two parentheses. Number 13, GCF is 8. X squared minus 1 is left over. That's a dots problem. Don't lose the 8. X minus 1, X plus 1. Number 14, 3 is the GCF. What's left over? X squared plus 10x plus 24. What multiplies to 24 but adds to 10? And that becomes x plus 6, x plus 4. Again, you can't lose your GCF. Next one, GCF is, whoopsie. Come on. Next one, your GCF just happens to be x. What's left over? X squared minus 7x plus 12. And then IAM, and it becomes x minus 4, x minus 3. And there's the answer. 16, GCF is 5. 4x squared minus y squared left over. Dots inside the parentheses, 2x minus y, 2x plus y. Again, you can't lose the 5 on the outside as a GCF. Next one, GCF, 2x. What's left over? X squared minus 10x minus 24. Don't lose your GCF. What multiplies to negative 24 but adds to negative 10? X plus 12, x minus 2. Last but not least, it's a challenge one. Let's see, we've got a GCF, and the GCF is a 2. What's left over is x to the 4th minus 16. Inside I can dots, so I don't lose my GCF, but I square root what's in the parentheses. It becomes x squared minus 4 and x squared minus 4. Or plus 4, one's minus and one's plus. The only reason why this is the challenge, and maybe it's not for you in terms of a challenge, but this particular parenthesis can be factored again. That's another dots. So what ends up happening is this stays as is. We can't factor x squared plus 4, but this x squared minus 4 happens to be a dots again. This becomes your final answer. That's not in our curriculum. However, some of you guys can probably do that extra challenge. Okay, so again, as you're looking at the instructions, factor completely is always a GCF first, then either dots or IM. If you're looking at the first page, when it just says to factor, that's just factor. It's either GCF or IM or dots. It's a one-step factoring. Okay, so you should be all set for the quiz tomorrow.